Some mutants suffer terribly from powers that make them a danger to others. Professor Xavier deals with those mutants. A Fringly Reddit story. Lie down, Jenny. Be at peace now. The professor gently stroked the young girl's head until she finally relaxed against her restraints and slumped back down onto her mattress. Her anger had been blocking his ability to soothe her mind, but a combination of powerful tranquilizers and speaking quietly had relaxed her enough to let him back in. Her mind was like a bear trap, waiting to spring closed at the slightest provocation. It would not catch him, though. The professor had been visiting since she was a baby and knew where to tread. Her anger was a throbbing core that he gingerly approached and watched as the drugs dulled it to a painful red mess before he soothed it further, sinking her deeper into oblivious unconsciousness. This poor girl, she would never be whole, never be able to function in the outside world. Her mutation had caused pure rage, and it manifested in strength and invulnerability, but also insanity. Free she would only grow in power and intensity, but that could not happen. She would never leave this room. Not while he had any say. It was too great a risk what she could do, what she could be made to do. Once he had thought about ending her life, but he could not. It was not within him to do so. Instead, she stayed here, never waking, never leaving. She would sleep now for 14 or 15 hours, and so the professor left her mind and returned to his own, glad to be away from what passed as a mind. The poor girl was developing bed sores again. He would need to turn her and dress them, but not today. He had too much to do. He often pondered if there was anyone who would understand what he was doing here, who might be able to help him. It was impossible to reveal this secret after so long, after everything he had done. No one would understand, and so it needed to stay a secret for only him to know. The corridor held 6 doors, 6 beds, and 6 children who were too dangerous for the world to know about. Each moment of every day, he monitored these children and ensured they never achieved a state where they could comprehend the world around them. All had the potential to be Omega-level threats. All perceived and despised him, and all must stay here. He sat in the hallway for a moment, gathering himself before he took the secret lift back into Cerebro, the only entrance to this place. Jean would be waiting outside for him, expecting him to have been working, and this afternoon he must fly to Washington to meet with the president. With this last sedation in place, he could relax and leave. All was prepared here. It had been 17 years that he had been coming to this secret place, and so the slight hiss of air stood out against the background hum that he was so familiar with. Impossible, no one could have breached the sanctum. It was protected by more layers of security than Tony Stark. He turned, almost frantic in his chair now, finally seeing the tiny button that had been attached to the back of the handle, expelling just a tiny amount of gas. Just enough to send him down. He slumped from his chair and fell to the floor, his mind too muddled now to be able to protect itself, but aware of the approaching form. It crouched down and touched his face gently. Sorry, Charles, but your secret is out, my old friend, and now it's time to tell the whole world. He heard the disgust creeping into the voice. You hypocrite. They stood, and for a moment all Charles could perceive was the cold of the floor on his face, but then there was the sensation of people again. 7 sets of footsteps, leading up and out of this hidden place, going back into the world. Professor? The voice was hollow, as if spoken from a distance. Pain was the first thing to re-emerge, and then light, blinding him, hurting him. No, I need to stop them. They can't be let loose. They need to be. He trailed off as he slowly became aware of his surroundings. He was in the medical bay at the school, Jean standing over him, using a light to check his eyes. Who can't be let loose, Professor? The people in those rooms in your secret prison. So much anger, it was almost blinding in its brilliance. Behind it, the bright, methodical brain of Scott was ticking away, folding hypotheses and filing them in order of disgust. He needed information before he could let them know any more. What happened? Who found me? He knew the answers. They were in the top of Scott's mind, along with confusion and fear, so much fear. It had been Eric. He'd come and taken them, taken away Charles's shame, his secret. How he'd Known was impossible to tell, but that could wait. The situation was too dire. Scott shook his head. I can feel you rummaging around in there, Charles. Just tell me what's going on and why you had 6 people chained up under the mansion. Would he understand? Could he? Jean was probing at his mind, looking to at least see if he was answering honestly. The poor girl. Did she really think he wouldn't notice? My reasons, Scott, are my own and nothing to do with you. All you need to know is that the 6 most dangerous people ever born have been freed by Magneto, and if he lets them loose. The professor trailed off, not even needing to lie to show his fear. Scott had been under his care since he was a boy. He had trusted and loved the professor his entire life, and while there were questions outstanding, the professor felt him put them to one side and trust coming back. Very well, but after we have this under control, you and I are going to talk. The professor nodded. After this, all sorts of things would need to change. The Blackbird settled in the far corner of Central Park, attracting a small crowd who immediately began to fire pictures across social media until the professor wiped their minds and sent them away. He was usually more gentle, but today he needed space, and so everyone in Lower Manhattan had just got the urge to head upstate for the weekend and began filing out of their offices in an orderly fashion. They were waiting where he knew they would be, at the large fountain where many years ago he and Eric had their final disagreement. Eric sat on the lip and the 6 others sat around him, some in adult bodies, but all children in their minds. They had never been able to grow, never been able to progress, and they were never meant to be free. All wore a small headband that blocked him from controlling them, although he could feel their thoughts. Behind him, Scott and Jean waited for his move, while Logan circled round, always the hunter looking for an angle on his prey. Hello, Eric. Magneto smiled. Hello, Charles, my old friend. How are you today? Charles felt for his mind, but the helmet blocked everything. How did you find them, Eric? How did you know? The smile that played on Eric's lips was almost carefree. You think you're so clever with your mind wipes, Charles, but you aren't infallible. He tapped his head. A friend helped me bring back a few of our early years. Boy, you really put me to work at times. Charles nodded. It was for the good of the world, Eric. It was for the good of everyone. The smile fell. So you kept these children as mindless monsters? These are mutants, Charles. They are. Your people, but look what you have done. Charles could feel the sedative was wearing away on the children. Soon they would be able to reason by themselves and then. Eric, please let me take them back now, before anyone gets hurt. They could end the world. Charles felt Scott stiffen in surprise behind him, realizing the magnitude of the problem now. Eric shook his head. No, it ends here today. It's your choice, Charles. You have to finally show where you stand, either with me and we teach these children and all mutant children not to fear their power, but to embrace it, or with the humans and locking children in dark rooms where they will never see the light. He gestured twice. The first pulled the bands free of the children's heads, and the second threw the approaching Wolverine back 100 feet and pinned him against a wall. I can't let them be free, Eric. He could feel their power growing. Each of these children would be nigh unstoppable if they were loose. One boy had the power to remove gravity from an object. If he lasted, out the solar system could come apart. Then you must stop them now, Charles. Are you really so far from the idealist that I thought you were? Are you really the monster that you have labeled me? Behind him, Jean at last spoke. Professor, surely we can find a way to help these children. Surely there is another way. They were wrong and they were out of time. The first of the children looked up and he saw the hatred in her eyes. In just a moment longer, she would pull the skin from the bodies of everyone here. He closed his eyes and did what needed to be done. 6 bodies slumped to the ground. So you make your choice. But the world knows you now, Charles. Eric gestured to the cameras that were hidden all around. Professor Xavier watched as his old friend turned and slowly walked away. The sorrow at what had been done was clear. Either way, the loss would have been too great to bear, but now 6 little minds floated behind the professors, howling with rage at this final indignity. The professor turned back to Scott and Jean, seeing the anger and contempt in their eyes. The world had been saved, but there was no joy, only 6 lifeless bundles on the ground. Wordlessly, he turned and made his way back to the Blackbird.